Hello and welcome. Have you ever thought that maybe your personality is more than just, a list of your likes and dislikes? What if it's actually a kind of built-in compass, pointing you down a spiritual path that's uniquely yours? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. This really fascinating idea that our psychological type can actually shape our deepest search for meaning. So this is the big question we're tackling. Can something like a personality test really tell us anything about something as deep and personal as our spirituality? The source material we're digging into today, from The Spiritual Seek, makes a pretty bold claim. It says absolutely. It suggests these types can offer a kind of map to our inner world. At our core, I think we're all looking for meaning. It's just this universal human thing. But how we search for it, well, that's totally individual. The idea here is that a framework like the Myers-Briggs isn't just a label. It's more like a map, helping us see the roads and pathways we're naturally drawn to on that big quest. Okay, so let's quickly talk about the tool itself. The Myers-Briggs, or MBTI, it sorts people into 16 different types. But for what we're talking about today, we're going to zoom right in on two traits the source says are absolutely key. First up is intuition, that's the N, which is all about seeing the big picture, the patterns, what could be. And then there's feeling, the F, which is about making choices based on your personal values and empathy. You put those two together, and you've got a powerful combination for spiritual seeking. And this is where it gets really deep. The source pulls from the work of philosopher Viktor Frankl, who had this incredible idea he called the will to meaning. He argued that what really drives us as humans isn't the search for pleasure or power, but this deep, profound need for purpose. And our personality? Well, it's not just about how we party or work. It fundamentally shapes the very way we go hunting for that purpose. So let's look at our first spiritual archetype and see how this all comes together. Let's meet the INFP, who the source beautifully calls the mystical idealist. If you know an INFP, you know these are the deep, introspective, value-driven dreamers who are always on a search for something more, something way beyond the surface of things. And that quote really gets to the heart of it. The key word for the INFP for everything they do is authenticity. For them, spirituality isn't about following a set of rules or fitting in. It's about finding an experience that feels deeply, personally, and unshakably true. Their inner compass is their only guide, and they just won't settle for anything fake. So, what does that actually look like? Well, INFPs usually feel way more at home with their own personal spiritual practices than with, say, organized religion. They're pulled towards mystical ideas, and they see their spiritual life as this never-ending journey of self-discovery. And get this, their creativity, it's not just a hobby, it's a spiritual pipeline. It's how they connect with the divine, whether it's through writing or music or art. All right, next up, we have the INFJ, described as the visionary prophet. Now, this type is such a fascinating mix of profound empathy and this powerful, almost sixth sense for the future. They don't just feel for people, they feel this deep responsibility to help guide all of us toward a better world. And this right here is so important to understanding the INFJ. Their sense of what's right and what's wrong, it's not something they just picked up from society. It comes from some deep, internal wellspring. It's almost like they're tuned into a different frequency, a guiding philosophy that feels ancient and sacred, and it compels them to take action. And that inner guidance often shows up in some really powerful ways. INFJs are known to have these visionary moments, or what they sometimes call downloads, sudden flashes of incredible insight. For them, spirituality can't just be an idea. It has to be turned into moral action. They really act as these bridges, taking a spiritual vision and working to make it real, right here in our world. And our final main archetype is the ENFP, the spiritual explorer. Okay, so if the INFP goes deep inside and the INFJ looks far into the future, the ENFP looks wide. They explore the whole vast landscape of spiritual ideas with just this boundless energy and a totally open heart. This is the ENFP's superpower right here. They see connections everywhere, in everything. Their mind is like this beautiful storm of ideas, finding spiritual meaning in a piece of art, in a scientific theory, in a random chat with a stranger. It's everywhere. For them, there are no walls between spiritual concepts. It's all just one big, amazing, interconnected web of wonder. So their spiritual path often ends up being this wonderfully eclectic mix. They might pull a little from Buddhism, some inspiration from Sufi poetry, and then mix in some modern mindfulness, all at the same time. For them, spirituality is supposed to be joyful, a celebration, and they are the natural community builders, the ones who bring everyone together to share in the magic of the journey. Okay, so this all sounds really fascinating and it paints a beautiful picture. But it's totally fair to ask, are these just poetic descriptions, or is there something more concrete here? Is there any real evidence that certain personality types are more spiritually wired? Let's see what the research cited in the source has to say. And there it is, a pretty powerful data point. According to the source, the research shows that intuitive types, that's the N in all three of the personalities we just looked at, are a staggering 3 times more likely to report having spiritual experiences than sensing types. That really suggests there's a strong link between that pattern-seeing, big-picture way of thinking and a natural pull towards the spiritual. So now that we have this framework, what do we actually do with it? This is probably the most important part, how to use this knowledge in a way that's actually helpful on your own personal journey. And that brings us to this really crucial distinction. Is your personality type a helpful compass, or is it a harmful cage? The whole point is to use it as a guide, something that points you toward practices and ideas that feel authentic to you. The danger is when it becomes a rigid box, an excuse not to grow, or even worse, a kind of spiritual ego trip where you think your way is the only way. It's meant to be a starting point, never a final destination. And that really brings us to the end. Ultimately, your personality isn't some fixed place you've arrived at. It's an instrument, a compass, that can help you navigate this massive, mysterious, and deeply personal search for meaning. So the only question left really is, where are you going to let it point you next? Thanks so much for joining me.